In my area, nobody is allowed to cry, and it's a hard thing to keep up to not ever cry while living in an area full of horrid and cold people. My parents are always shouting at us to never cry, and every house has a swimming pool, and we all live next to rivers and canals. When my eldest brother started crying, my parents took his eyes out so that he could never ever cry again. And when my second eldest brother started to cry, my parents took his eyes out as well, and also the rest of his face. If we were on the verge of crying, we then needed to jump into the swimming pool or to the next nearest river or canal. It's a horrible moment when you find yourself on the verge of tears because someone has done something to you or a tragic event has happened, which just makes you emotional. When I am on the verge of tears, I just jump into a swimming pool, or I go and find the next nearest river or canal. I have nearly drowned many times, but at least I have never cried. This is why everyone in my area has a swimming pool and lives next to rivers or canals. You cannot cry underwater. I once helped a friend to never cry by pushing him into the canal, where he unfortunately drowned. His parents understood why I did this to their son, as he was on the verge of crying, and when I kept asking him whether he was okay, it just pushed him nearer to crying. Then one day, I found a cabin in some abandoned forest, and inside this cabin, silence and privacy was present. I was able to cry without anyone knowing or seeing me. I passed this secret on to 4 of my friends, and we each took turns going into this cabin to cry on our own. It was amazing. We had a timetable of whose turn it was to cry inside the cabin, but one day a terrible event had come upon us when the town economy had completely gone. This destroyed the order of the timetable because all 5 of us desperately needed to go inside the cabin so that we could cry about it on our own. None of us dared to go inside the cabin together and to see each other cry, because that would be an abomination to see each other cry. So I took my gun out and shot my 4 friends, and I went inside the cabin where I cried on my own about the terrible event of the economy and my 4 dead friends. So everything with the cabin worked out in the end. Tony was in the woods last week with a few of his friends, and they were with this guy that was new from school, who claimed to know all about black magic. Tony and his friends didn't take him seriously. The guy was called Gerald. Gerald had asked Tony, did he know much about black magic? And Tony said, trying to keep a straight face, "Oh yeah, I could write a book on it." His friends knew he was being sarcastic. A few nights later, Tony was sitting down watching TV when he had spotted something on the ground that hadn't been there before. He was trying to figure out how it got there. It seemed to be a book. The cover was just plain, and the book didn't seem to have any title. He began to start reading it. He read, "I was just sitting down, relaxing, reading, when I started hearing weird sounds, but I didn't know which direction they were coming from. It just seemed like there was a weird sound in my ears. Then suddenly the lights went out for a second and came back on again." Tony felt a shiver run up his spine as the lights in his living room had just gone out the second he had read that the light had gone out, and then the light came back on again, just like written in the book. He began to read on. He read, "I was wondering what was happening. I felt weird, but I didn't know why. I couldn't explain what was happening. Then suddenly a light entered the room." Tony was freaking out at this stage, as there was a light entered the room after he read about it happening in the book. He had decided to just shut the book and forget about it, but his curiosity was getting the better of him, so he read on. He regretted reading it as soon as he read the sentence, "Gerald walked into my room and went to attack me." Tony knew martial arts, so was ready for him and threw him over his shoulder. Gerald hit his head off an ornament and blood poured from him. Tony knew he had killed him. Tony knew it was self-defense, so had decided to call the police. But before he rang, he saw a page on the floor. He read what was written on it. "Gerald will come back to life and possess your body." Tony turned around, and without even being able to react, was possessed by Gerald. And then Gerald spoke in Tony's body. "Now, Tony, you will be able to write a book all about black magic."
Vamos a jugar en el 43.
Brenda and Tony were driving along the countryside on a December night. They were on a road trip for 2 weeks as a part of unwinding from a lot of hard work doing up their new house. The plan was to stay in several motels along the way and enjoy the road trip and eating out in diners and enjoying the scenery in between. It was just about getting dark when Brenda was surprised to see a hitchhiker on the road. She said to Tony, "Do you see that?" Tony said, "Yeah, I wonder who is it, way out here." The couple decided to stop, and the hitchhiker said, "Hi there, my name is Paul. I would really love if you could give me a drive just a few miles up the road to the next motel, please. I took the wrong bus and I'm walking miles." Tony said, "Sure, hop in the back." The man's name was Peter. When he was in the back, he began to speak. "I was sure happy to see you guys come along. I must have been walking for miles. I was about to drop unconscious with tiredness from all the walking, and believe me, I'm not fit enough to walk that long. But ye guys, where are ye from? Let me guess. The big city, or maybe you're from the suburbs. Maybe you're the type of people that look down on folk like me." Brenda and Tony found that comment to be strange. Tony said, "Excuse me? Why would we look down on you?" Peter suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it to Brenda's head and said, "I'll tell you why you look down on me, because I've a gun held to your girlfriend, or is it your wife's head, and you're probably saying to yourself, I'm crazy." Tony said in a voice filled with fear and shock, "What the hell, man? Put away that gun." Peter said, "I do the talking around here, now keep driving." Brenda began to feel around her pocket for her phone and pretended to sneeze, to look down and press 911. When she did, she kept the phone on, hoping it would be traced. Tony said, Look man, I don't know what's going on, okay? But I know that we did nothing to you, so please just put the gun away. Suddenly Peter shouted, "Stop the damn car." Brenda shouted, "Please, no, please stop, just leave us alone." When the car stopped, Peter shot Tony in the back of his head and he died instantly. The hitchhiker shouted to Brenda, "You're lucky I'm not going to kill you, bitch," and he ran out of the car. Brenda picked the phone up and said to the 911 operator, "Please help me, please, my husband has just been killed by some guy we picked up." 10 minutes later, the police arrived and took a statement from Brenda. Brenda was sitting inside her home that herself and Tony had recently refurbished. There was a noise at the door, and a figure walked into the room. She could see that it was Peter the hitchhiker. He pulled out a gun and pointed at her. Then he smiled and said, "Bang, bang." She smiled back at him and said, "I have your money, and thanks for taking this job. He actually was cheating on me all the while we were doing up our new home." Peter said, "I actually must give you credit for this idea and coming up with the 911 call, etc. But as much as I'd love to stay around for tea, I need to get going, because if your police or neighbours see me, then who knows, tongues might start wagging and they might ask questions." Brenda asked, "What do you mean? How will they trace you to all this? They never even saw your face." Peter said, "I know, but I still have to tie up loose ends." Brenda said, "What do you mean?" Peter said, "Don't worry, it will be over soon." He lifted the gun and shot Brenda in her head. Then he walked into her bedroom and opened up her safe with her own finger he cut off just a minute ago. He was going to just go ahead and murder her husband for $100,000, but she had too much a big mouth and told him about a safe full of diamonds that only her fingerprint would open. He smiled when he looked at all the diamonds. Then suddenly he heard a ticking sound. He wondered what it was. He looked around the room to see. Suddenly all the doors and windows locked. He assumed it was some sort of alarm from the safe being opened at a time that wasn't scheduled. He heard the ticking get louder as he looked under the bed and saw that it was a bomb. From the timer he saw that it would detonate in 10 minutes. For the next 10 minutes he looked around for a way out of the house, but when the 10th minute came, he exploded with the house.